get that back. On Sunday evenings, we're looking at the experience that some have of becoming interested in the Christian faith, being drawn towards not religion, but to faith in Jesus, perhaps for all kinds of reasons, maybe because of what's happening in the lives of others, friends or relatives, and the things that you may be hearing, that may be seeing in society in a broader way, and finding that there is an interest, there is a desire to find out what is the truth. And yet we're conscious for some that that journey has gone so far, but then no further. And we're trying to work out, or trying to address the possible reasons for that. And we're going to take up another one of those this evening. Let me introduce it this way, and you'll see hopefully where we're going just briefly this evening. It may well be that you've done okay for yourself. And it may be that you would look back and say, do you know what? I set myself some goals in life, and I think I've probably achieved most of them. In fact, if I was I'm trying to be humble, but, I think in some ways I've overachieved. If I look back at my life, as far as I've gone so far, I think I've probably done better than I ever expected, maybe better than some other people expected. If I think of where I started from, well, I think I've probably, if you did a weighting on it, I started back before others, I was handicapped, and yet I think I've come through to actually win the race. And I've made up ground on others and got ahead of them, and probably, in terms of the proportions of those things, I think I've done better than most. And you might say, I think people respect me. They do at work, I'm pretty sure. I know in my family are proud of me, and I think, well, that's not misplaced, to be honest. I have earned the respect of others because I work hard. It wasn't easy, it wasn't given to me on a plate. So I've gone out and I've battled and I've fought and I've put myself out there and I've done well. I have worked hard. And, just to use the cliches, I pay my taxes, I keep my nose clean. And if some people do look up to me, well, they're probably not wrong to do so. And we have a tiny smile to ourselves. Maybe that's where you've been coming from. Maybe that describes in one way or another, maybe not entirely, just how you perceive of yourself and your life. And yet, you will acknowledge that there has been something missing though. And you've never been able to put your finger on it. And that's why when you've seen and heard from others, there's an interest in Christianity, in the Jesus of Christianity, that there was something within you that made you feel this is worth exploring. It's worth it for me. I feel pulled somewhat in that direction. I guess at the end of the World Cup this evening, it may well be that if we counted up the number of people in the country interested in football now, maybe there are more than there were before. Or maybe that was true on Wednesday tea time, but not Wednesday at midnight. Who knows? But the interest of others draws other people in. And because of their excitement and what they're experiencing, more people become fans, become interested. And you might say, that's how it's been for me with Christianity. That I could see that others were really impacted by it, really changed. And they were saying that they had changed. And I just want to find out for myself, because I do feel something of a hole, a gap. Not everything is as it should be. Despite all the things that I've said about myself and what I may have achieved, I'm willing to acknowledge that not everything is right. And so I've gone on that journey. I've started listening to podcasts, you might say. I've read a book or two, or I've watched some YouTube videos, and I've just gone where the others have gone. They've sent me the link and I've watched it. They've sent me the link and I've listened to it. I've even started, on occasions, even reading the Bible. Not quite sure where to go, but, I've done that. I've even been to church a time or two because that's what my friends seem to be doing. And maybe sometimes you think, well, perhaps that's all it's going to take. And maybe I've arrived. Perhaps there is nowhere further to go. But you don't feel that you've received what they seem to have received. But then maybe here's the thing that is at the bottom of that sense of being stuck and having come to something of a halt. that as you've read, as you've listened, as you've watched, as you've talked, as maybe you might have come along to church, just lately you felt like maybe I shouldn't have begun moving towards the Christian faith, moving towards Jesus, because there are two things that have become really clear to you. The first is this, that all the things that you set a lot of store by, your achievements, the fruits of that hard work, the things that you so much value about yourself and who you've become. People don't really know me. They don't know where I've come from and how far I've traveled to get to where I am today. All that kind of stuff. They don't seem to hold any sway at all. Not with God. And maybe not with people in church, perhaps. Not in terms of the things that you're listening to. No one seems to give you the credit that you know, you believe you deserve. Isn't God even just a little bit impressed by me? You get the impression that they don't count, those things. They're not how people, and especially Jesus, God, they're not the lens through which he's seeing me. He's not saying to me, in what I'm hearing and reading and thinking about, he's not saying to me, I've got to give you credit, you know. There is something commendable about that, and it gives you actually a move further up over those who've not done those things. No one is parading those achievements before God to say, this person has shown themselves to be worthy of you. But then the second thing, in a sense, it goes along with that, and it's kind of like a harder one to acknowledge because it has less of a commendable feel to it. But you're finding out, you're being told, it's there in the messages, and you can just see it before you anyway. You're being told that in the church, in God's family, there actually aren't different levels. It's the kind of sociological outworking of what I've just been saying in terms of God. Everyone sits at the same table. Everyone belongs on the same page, without distinctions, without worth coming into the equation at all. And maybe you've heard a statement, it's a great way of expressing it, and I've used it, it doesn't originate with me, but I heard it and thought, that's great, that's really, it pictures it so well, it's very memorable, that the ground at the foot of the cross is level. Everyone who comes to Jesus stands on the same ground, and no one is above another at that point. And that feels to you quite jarring, because it's not how you see life. It's not how you've lived life. It's not how you've understood how things are. Surely it's possible to work yourself to be closer to God than others, to be more worthy of his attention and his favour than some other people are. Surely I'm not being reduced to the same level as him or her or anyone else. That doesn't feel right to me, you might say. I just find it's closing my heart rather than opening it towards this Christianity stuff. If this is how it's got to be, it doesn't feel that attractive. It's coming across to you perhaps at a price that is too hard to pay, and you're not ready to lay down your hard-won reputation. Well, if something like that, maybe not identical to that, but like that, is what you've been wrestling with, I hope that we might, in a very brief way this evening, be able to work through that and to have something to take away in our minds that will be worth continuing to think about and to work it through. What could we say to that? Well, more to the point, what does Jesus say to that? How might he respond to us if we want to be holding on to the things that we are proud of, and in a sense setting them on the table and asking for them to be taken into account in that equation, but I'd rather it was a table that I can sit at on my own rather than with other people. Maybe you're like that when you get on a train, if you've not bought a ticket for a particular seat and you're looking around, or on a coach and thinking, I want a table to myself. I want 4 seats so I can put my legs out there, and I can have my bag there, and I can look through the window over there without that person thinking I'm always looking at them. No, I'd just like a nice 4 seat to myself, and I don't really want to be near anyone who's just tapping away on a laptop, or someone who's just talking to someone. Oh no, 2 people are going to sit down right in front of me and they're just jabbering away. Oh no, 4 hours of this. And maybe you feel, yeah, I couldn't have church like that. What can we say to that kind of thing? What does Jesus have to say? Well, I'm going to refer us to a passage. You don't need to turn there, but if you want to, by all means do. In Luke's Gospel. Luke's Gospel and chapter 18. Last Sunday evening, Richard was talking to us about a man who's found in Luke chapter 19, Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector. Well, we're going back into chapter 18 and to verse 9. And Luke introduces it with a sentence, and then Jesus is the one speaking. What he writes is this, Luke 18 from verse 9, it's page 1052 in the church Bibles. To some who are confident in their own righteousness or of their own righteousness and look down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He wouldn't even look up to heaven, but he beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you, says Jesus, this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Well, you might think sometimes preachers can get a little bit direct, but I tell you what, if anyone is being direct there, it's Jesus. He sees some people around him who are confident of their own righteousness, looking down their nose at other people. And he tells them a parable that he interprets for them. Needs no explanation. It lands like a hand grenade right in the midst of these people. They're not going to be walking away thinking, I'm not quite sure what he was saying or who he had in mind. It's obvious, it's clear. No beating about the bush. Here is a man in the parable who is like some of the people around Jesus at that point. He is confident in his own righteousness. That God, you've got to take notice of me, and the society needs to take notice of me, and I'm in a really good place. Why? Well, because of who I am and how I live and what I do. I'm in the clear. I'm right with God. And Jesus says he wasn't. He isn't. He can't be. Not right with God. All those achievements, they count for exactly nothing. Now, they don't count for nothing in the sense of if you've worked yourself up from a really bad start, God would want to say, I would want to say to you, that is so commendable. And keep going, and well done for doing that, for investing yourself in life. No one wants to discredit anyone for doing that kind of thing. Jesus is talking about something else. That this is something that commends me to God, and in a sense, offsets anything that might be wrong regarding me. It tips the scales. And it forces his hand in terms of accepting me and of seeing that I'm okay, actually, with him. And I'm the one who's made it okay. He, in a sense, has been passive. He's just been looking on and assessing my life. And he's able to put everything in the balance and things are okay. And that's what's wrong. And that's where the man has gone wrong. And people like him had gone wrong. Not because his behaviour wasn't proper, In a sense, not much wrong with how he was living in some ways. But it's what he's trying to show through that. God, you're in my debt, so to speak. And when my life comes to an end, I'm going to call in that debt. I put you in my debt by how I lived, and now it's time for you to give me the things that I have worked for and deserve from you. Because you and me, we're okay. We're in a good relationship. It's all been sorted because I sorted it. There's nothing that stands against me now. My hard work has shown that I am a worthy person. It wasn't being done as a response of worship to God that begins at the point that says, I need mercy and forgiveness from you, and I need your love and your kindness. And what I'm going to do, having received those, I want to live, and it will be imperfect, but I want to offer you what I do as worship. What I've just described there is so different to the other description that I've given, isn't it? And that's what's happening in a sense in that parable. Jesus is saying that these people, and he's personifying them in that man in the parable, are just being like the first part of that description. Self-justifying, proving their own worth, not just to people, but to God. And God seems very far from this man's mind. Here is the bitter irony of this. It's almost as though he's praying to himself. He stands by himself. He's not in a community of worshippers because he wouldn't put himself there, because I'm not like these people. I'm different to them. I'm so thankful I'm not like them. I'm in a class of my own as far as how God sees me. And what's going on almost in his heart and mind is a discussion with himself, not actually with God, because he assumes he knows what it matters to God and how he's to come to him. He isn't really engaging with God, and he's actually excluded himself from human companionship in worshipping God. He's in a terrible place. He is so curved in on himself. And what is going hand in hand with that is very clearly complete contempt for other people and for the tax collector who is standing nearby. I thank you, I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like that tax collector. I am defining myself over and against other people. If they are bad, that means that I am even better than I was before in the sight of others. The further down they are, the further down I can push them, the higher then I seem to go in my own estimation, and I hope and believe it will be in God's estimation as well. But those sorts of people, they are irrelevant, and those sorts of people are unacceptable. And I'm so glad I'm not like them. I'm different. And we can imagine in our own minds the kind of people today who we might want to put into that kind of category. I won't specify, I'll let you work that through for yourself. But there are going to be those sorts of people, because we all have a tendency to work in this kind of way. There are some people, if they came within your circle, you would find them offensive and you would want them to go. And we all know that's true, each one of us. And that's how it was for this man in the parable that Jesus tells. A man like the tax collector, what use is he in the world? He has one use and one use only. He's another rung for me to climb higher by defining myself over and against him. That's how it was with the man. And Jesus is not pulling any punches. He's saying for those who are confident of their own righteousness, look down on others, this is the reality. Well, where does the reality hit? Well, it's in the conclusion of the story. And it pulls the rug right from under the feet of the people who are listening, who were the smug, self-satisfied ones. Because there is the most unexpected, astonishing reversal of fortunes. I tell you, says Jesus. It's like he's got a highlighter pen for us. Listen, guys, this is what I am saying to you. This man, the man who was beside himself with grief over his sin, not the man who was stuffed with pride, this man went home justified. this man went home right with God. Well, how can that be? Because there's nothing about him that's commendable. So how could he go home justified? There's a lovely phrase in the Bible. It speaks about God who justifies the ungodly. It's not saying God says their sin doesn't really matter. I've got this massive carpet in heaven, my divine carpet, and I can sweep their sin under that, and we can just pretend it doesn't exist. God justifies the ungodly. What it's saying is those who put their faith in Jesus for mercy and kindness and forgiveness will be declared right by God. They are ungodly, but if they do what this man does, God, have mercy on me, a sinner, facing the reality, owning it, not arguing against it, not having a downer on himself for no good reason, but just being honest and vulnerable before God and asking for mercy. This man, because of that, goes home justified. Because he's taking God for who he is. Not trying to argue his case with him. Not trying to construct a case that I should be in your good books. And you should be so thankful to have me on side. Most other people would be. But saying, I've got nothing going for me. And all I can do with empty hands is receive your kindness and your mercy. That man went home justified. And there's the wake-up call for those who are listening to Jesus. He's saying to them, you think everything's okay. You're putting such great store by what you've achieved and how you've lived. And you're trying to make yourself even higher up by distinguishing yourself from other people. But that is not how it's going to work. A wake-up call for every one of us. Hard work, personal achievements are not what commend us to God. Jesus is not there to fill in a few gaps you might still have in your CV. He is the only one to properly and fully deal with everything that's wrong with us. The things that other people are so clear about, they can see it. And then the things that we've successfully hid from so many others, but we carry the weight of deep inside us. Our open sins, our secret sins, can all forgiven be by Jesus, because he carried it all on himself, into himself, on the cross. That's why we say that the cross is such a demonstration of love, the love of God. This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and gave his Son to be the sacrifice that deals with our sin. What wonderful, wonderful love. It's a real wake-up call. And if you've got stuck because you feel, but everything that I thought was to my account, to my credit, seems to be just being taken out of the way, and I'm expected to think that I'm no better than other people. Well, that is the truth, actually. And you're going to have to swallow hard and accept that that is. And if you can see yourself in that description, we're going to just ask before we finish, how do you then go on from there? How do you change things, if you like? Well, it has to come through what would be a radical reappraisal of who we really are and what's at the heart of the Christian faith. And I think the best place for us to go for that is that passage I read to us, that letter to the Philippians in the Church Bible. It was on page 1180, I think, chapter 3, Philippians chapter 3. Here is a man by the name of Paul. He used to be called Saul when he was a fire-breathing Pharisee. Now he's called Paul and he's a Christian. And he's telling us his story. And he's saying, at one time I was so full of myself, and I was the person who was able to say, if anyone is near to God, if anyone is right with him, then it's got to be me. Just look what's in my account. Just look what I can say. Very few, if any, could match the case that he could muster before God. I couldn't, you couldn't. That would be a race we could never win. He says, I used to have plenty of reasons for confidence, but they were all about what he's calling the flesh, human effort. He said, I was circumcised on the 8th day. It didn't get delayed for me. I had the Jewish rite of circumcision at exactly the right time, as God had said. From the off, I'm in a good place. I'm of the people of Israel. And what's more, I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. And I'm a Hebrew of Hebrews. You can't get more Hebrew than me, he's saying. When it comes down to God's law, what was I? I was a Pharisee. They were hugely interested in God's law. Performative righteousness, that's what it was all about for them. Being able to demonstrate it to others and demonstrate it to God. There are no gaps. I know the rules, I know how to keep them. And that's what I'm doing, and that's where I'm going. As for zeal, how much energy, how much commitment has he got towards God and God's cause? As for zeal, well, I persecuted the church. These people who say that Jesus is the way and not what I'm now thinking at that point in his life, well, we can't be having that. It's blasphemous, really. And he was a violent man. He took it out on other people, hounded Christians even to their death. And as for a righteousness, a standing with God that was based on the law, he says, faultless. No one could say, do you know what, I think you're deficient in this area. No, I'm not. I definitely am not. I know the law, I'm an expert in it, I know how to keep it, and I do. So if you think I'm deficient, then just back off, because I know my case. He says that's where I was. That was all to my credit. That's where my confidence was in things to do with human effort and what a person is in this world, according to the flesh. But the astonishing thing is, he says in verse 7, whatever were gains to me, think of that case that I could have mounted before people and to God. Whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. He's given them up for Jesus' sake. His whole thinking has been reconfigured about them. He doesn't see them in the same way anymore. He says, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I've lost all things. I consider them to be garbage, rubbish. That's a mark of how far his way of thinking has changed and been transformed. He's no longer holding on to these things. He's seen them now for what they really are. It was just so foolish. It was just so, in a sense, self-destructive. It was just so deluded. To imagine that I've got no problem because I've sorted it all out myself. He's seen it for what it is, set in the light of God and who God really is and who Jesus as the Son of God really is. You see, he says here in the words that I was just reading, I'll read them again to us. He says that the reason he's able to leave those things behind is he's understood them now. It's like a light from Jesus has shone on them. And he thought they were diamonds, but they weren't diamonds. He thought that they were so clean, but when the light has shone on them, his works, his heart, his living, it wasn't clean. It wasn't faultless. It was terribly corrupt. Whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. What's more, I consider everything a loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord, for whose sake I've lost all things. I consider them garbage, that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, the righteousness that comes from God on the basis of faith. I can see now, he says, the surpassing beauty and glory and greatness of Jesus, and how everything I thought gave my life meaning and hope and value and stood me in good stead with God. I can see now that I see through it now. It's rubbish. It's garbage. When I see how great Jesus is and the glory of his love that he should be the one who bears all my guilt and shame. He should be the one who goes to the depths of the grave in my place and then rises again. That he shouldn't have just completely ruled me out, but he's actually beckoning me in. Isn't that the kind of thing that would move you forward if you've got stuck? The God who says, I can see exactly who you are and what you are. And I'm not disparaging the efforts that you've put in, but I want you to know those things ultimately are not the things that will count. So don't hold on to those as though they're the thing that you really need. It won't clear your sin. It won't change your heart. It won't lift the shame. But I'll tell you what will, he says to you, my love and the sacrifice of Jesus. And I'm holding that out to you and I'm inviting you to come. And yes, if you come through the door, you will see there's all sorts of other people there. And you were in as much of a state as they were, deep down inside. And it's this love of Jesus that is going to be making you able to be honest in reflecting on that and receiving it. And not disparaging others, but recognizing that you're home. You're home amongst brothers and sisters. Fallen, fragile humanity, lost in guilt and shame, but loved into life by Jesus. And Jesus now fills his horizons. And if you've been interested in the Christian faith, I want to encourage you to follow through to Jesus. He's at the center of it all. It's not just a way of life. It's not a new life hack some people have found to make their daily life a little bit more bearable. The very center of it all is Jesus. And that's where this man Paul goes. He is a Christian now. He's one that Jesus has sent to take the message to others. But look at verse 10. He's saying, I want to know Christ. Well, I thought you did. It's a bit odd being an apostle if you don't know this Jesus. What he's saying is, I want to keep on knowing him. I want to get to know him more and more and more and more. Because there are such ocean depths in this Jesus. There is so much more to know. A God who is infinite in his goodness, in his beauty, in his worth. Paul, do you know Jesus? Yes, but I want to know him. I want to get to know him. And that's what's being held out before us this evening. The opportunity and the possibility of a life where God keeps giving and giving. And we're unworthy recipients. And yet he keeps calling us in and calling us closer. And says to us, everything that has ever burdened you and everything that has ever been a sense of shame about you, it's all been carried by Jesus. And you don't need any longer to try to prove yourself to me, because it doesn't work on that basis. I know everything there is to know about you. And yes, I'm going to commend you for some of the stuff you've done. You've been through so many hardships, and it is really commendable. But I don't love you because it's commendable. I love you because I want to love you, and I want to rescue you, and I want to make you new, and I want you in my family. He calls. And there is power in that call. And if you sense that power, well, it's the power that can unlock where you've reached and bring you further forward. But you need to be willing to come with empty hands. Whatever were gains to me in my thinking, I'm losing them for the sake of Jesus. I'm not holding on to them. That doesn't mean you stop being and doing what you're doing in your life, your job, your career, whatever it might be, but no longer holding those as demonstrations of your worth as opposed to others or what commends you to God, but doing them in a different way because you know you've been set free by the love of Jesus that has loved you into life. His love has the power to move you forward, unstick you, and bring you finally home to himself. Well, may God bless what we've been looking and thinking about this evening.